Welcome to our ongoing series of the Book of Mormon Roundtable discussion. Today we're slated to discuss Ether, chapters 1 through 6. And my name is Keith Wilson, and I'm a professor of ancient scripture in the College or in Religious Education at Brigham Young University. I have here today with me three of my colleagues, good friends, Andrew Skinner to my left, David Whitchurch to his left, and Stanley Johnson to his left. We're pleased to be able to discuss this and try to offer a few comments here as we further try to deepen our understanding of this great book. Today, the Book of Ether is a curious portion of the Book of Mormon, to say the least, because it's just like an insert into the Book of Mormon, almost a time warp, if you will. I've heard some say that this is the Book of Mormon in a microcosm, that you have some 30 generations and 31 pages, the time frame. It's a whole different people, the record of the Jaredites. And so it's just kind of a fascinating thought to begin with. One thought that I love to raise is just, why did Moroni, who's the editor-in-chief of this portion of the Book of Mormon, why did he feel so compelled to select this record amongst all the records that he had there at his disposal to insert into the Book of Mormon? Certainly this was kind of a subjective choice on his part to put this extra record in, anachronistic and all those aspects. What are your thoughts on why the overall message and insertion of the Book of Ether just here in the tail end of the Book of Mormon?
Well, I really do think that it's the Book of Mormon in condensed form. You've got 1,500 years covered in the Book of Mormon. It touches on many of the themes that we've seen before in the Book of Mormon. Moroni says, even though it's a long period of time and condensed so tightly, he hasn't told us 100th part of what he could have. But as we go through it, I think we do see many of the same themes and doctrines that we've seen throughout the entire Book of Mormon.
You know, this really becomes a second witness in so many ways. You know, if you read earlier, as we're first introduced to Moroni, we know he's isolated. He's in a situation where he's by himself. He doesn't know how long he has to live. And you can see, seemingly as he concludes his record at the end of the Book of Mormon and bears his testimony of Christ, again, he doesn't know how long he has, and then placing this record at the end really does establish a second witness with regard to what happens to people who aren't willing to live by the covenants that they've been given. Mm-hmm. So it encapsulates a second story of a similar culture.
It's almost like Moroni maybe had an aha moment when he read this text, and it coincided so tightly with his testimony and his message that he then said, this has got to be a part, and put it in there. Now, what about the context of the Book of Ether? Kind of situate it for us, Stan. Where does it come in? Because it's sort of abrupt.
Well, it really it starts at the Tower of Babel, and he said we could have gone clear back at the first, but we don't need to do that. You have that in the brass plates, and of course we have it in the Old Testament. So it starts there and talks about the compounding of the languages and how Jared and the brother of Jared, all that, they don't want theirs confounded, and so Jared goes to his brother. Evidently, Jared is the man in charge, but the brother of Jared has a connection there, it seems like, with the Lord, and so they don't want their languages confounded.
So the brother of Jared, more like the administrative head, or the leader, sort of the civic leader, the family leader, if you will, and then the brother of Jared, his brother, then being kind of the prophetic leader?
That's how I kind of look at it. Of course, we're guessing, but it looks like Jared's a king, and Brother Jared's the prophet, if you want to put it simply, in my mind.
Well, and as king, he and his descendants would have been the likely record keepers, and so it makes some sense that we have the language.
And as one of you pointed out, which I hadn't realized before, is it really does come from the voice of Jared, and that was an interesting insight, one that you gave me.
Yeah. Also, it helps us to set a context for the rest of the Book of Mormon, because it really describes the first scriptural group to arrive on the American continent, and that Jared or Moroni may have said, you know, there's an omission here, and this answers the questions that some people are going to have. So he includes it.
Well, as they contemplate departing from the Tower of Babel and finding a new place and being sent out and dispersed in that chapter 1, he begins to pick up on a theme that certainly is prevalent at the first of chapter 2, and that's the fact that they're going to a place that's been preserved for them. And especially this title that's carried throughout, the choice land. David, tell us some things about just how this setting lays the foundation for the choice land.
Well, I think for me, as I read through the Book of Ether, it's not just understanding the storyline of those that came over at the time of Jared and his brother, but it's really an opportunity for Moroni to give us little mini sermons or lessons in between. And so as you're reading along in chapter 2 and you're finding out that the Lord is going to send them to the promised land, then you get these short little pauses, and Moroni begins to talk to us. For example, in verse 9 of chapter 2, now Jared and brother of Jared are coming over here, those that are with them. And then in verse 9, and now we can behold the decrees of God concerning this land, that it is a land of promise, and whatsoever nation shall possess it shall serve God, or they shall be swept off when the fullness of his wrath shall come upon them, and the fullness of his wrath cometh upon them when they are ripened in iniquity. And then he goes on and begins to talk about, again, emphasizing the importance of the promises regarding the land of promise. So again, Moroni in his commentary that he provides is extremely insightful, and he intersperses it throughout the entire Book of Ether.
Yeah, this book is just so deep that way, to see the layers that you're reading as you read any particular verse. I love the fact that this is also parallel. And if you want to do a parallel study of this whole notion of the promised land and the choice land that these peoples are brought to, 2 Nephi chapter 1 and Lehi's statements, very similar, but here for the Jaredites it goes deeper, I believe. There's some things that are crystallized in a forceful way. So what are some of the doctrines here of the promised land quickly, and then let's move forward in the chapter.
One that hits me is that we'll be free from bondage. What a promise. I mean, if we serve the God of this land, I think about their whole history and how they were told, you want a king? Well, good luck, because it will lead to bondage.